I'm John Bowden. We're up to our entire interview with Michael Shrieve. It's the first time we've talked to him, the original drummer of Santana, who went on to be in a supergroup with Al Di Meola, the guitarist, and Steve Winwood. Drums of Compassion is his brand new album. We talk about, and we cover a lot of ground on this one, how he got into Santana, being at Woodstock, how his drum solo at Woodstock is known as one of the greatest, but he said there was actually another drum thing that he did that he thought was even better. In this one, he talks about the drummers that he loves so much, how Neal Schon made a difference in Santana, who of course later went on with Greg Raleigh to form Journey. That and a lot more coming up in our full interview with Michael Shrieve on Rock History Music. Michael Shrieve was born July 6, 1949 in San Francisco. He's an iconic drummer, best known for his groundbreaking work with the band Santana. And that career of his took off at a young age. But let's remember the amount of work you have to do to be noticed by Carlos Santana and to be on stage as one of the youngest performers at Woodstock. He was only 20. That was in 1969. This extraordinary performance at Woodstock, especially during the solo in Soul Sacrifice, is one of the most iconic moments in rock and roll history. Many call it the holy grail of drumming solos. So Shrieve was a big part of the early success of Santana, playing on their first album, simply titled Santana, and released just a few days after their performance at Woodstock in '69. And it featured the hit Evil Ways. He continued to be a big part of that band on subsequent albums, including Abraxas in 1970, which included the iconic track Black Magic Woman, originally recorded by Fleetwood Mac and written by their guitarist, Peter Green. And then their amazing version of Tito Puente's Hoy Como Va. Shreve's blend of rock, jazz, and Latin rhythms helped define the band's unique style. Shrieve stayed with Santana till the mid-1970s, playing on several more iconic albums, including Santana 3. And he stayed with them as they experimented with more jazz-influenced sounds. After leaving the band, Shrieve embarked on a very successful solo career and worked with a lot of different artists, including Stomo Yamashita's Go project. Yamashita was a pioneer in popularizing a fusion of traditional Japanese percussive music and Western progressive rock, specifically in the 60s and 70s. This band Go also featured Steve Winwood and Al Di Meola. Throughout his career, Shrieve has made major contributions to music, but always stretching the envelope. Fusion meets rock meets world music, and he's been instrumental in popularizing African drum sounds for quite a few years. His new album is called Drums of Compassion. It's a very primal drumming masterpiece, featuring the father of African drumming, Michael Olantuji, who died quite a few years ago, but his old recordings are featured on the album. Trey Gunn is also on there, as well as Airto Moreira. When it comes to drumming, you can easily say Michael Shrieve has his own lane. I have to tell you, this record jiggled me up inside, man.
Oh, good, man. This is an interesting record for me as well. I mean, I wanted to get it just right, and it took me like a couple of centuries to do it. But it's important to me. It feels like an offering for me with, 75 years old, and it feels like a really perfect representation of where I am musically, personally, what music does to me, how I want to transmit music, the intention behind it. It doesn't mean everything I'm going to do is going to be like this. I've already got like a whole bunch of new stuff to release, but this one I needed to let go. I'm glad it made you feel that way. Just the first track alone with Olatunji and that groove, So I mean that groove was. I tell you, that track is a combination of Las Vegas Tango by Gil Evans and Gree Gree by Dr. John.
So did he really? Was he really? I was looking him up, and by the way, you probably know this, but Drums of Passion, when you released that in '59, you were 10 years old back then.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very aware of the connection, of that record, and the beauty of it is to go full circle and have him you know, do the opening chant on this record. And he's been gone for a while, but this was recorded for another project that I had called Abraxas Pool with the ex-Santana guys. And we re-recorded the song Jingo, which we did in Santana, which was Olatunji's song on that first Drums of Passion record. And we recorded these incantations, but the guys didn't chose not to use it on the record. But I thought it was magic, and so I took it and put it on my record.
Trey Gunn. Oh man,
Yeah, Trey. Yeah,
that war guitar, man.
it's really special. This piece of music, he's playing on a couple, but there's one that I was trying. I wanted some instrument there. I tried Graham Haynes on trumpet. I tried sax. I tried, different instruments. Um, and then Trey, I heard Trey doing something. I thought, okay, let's try this because I wanted it to be something different and not really recognizable in some ways, but sound like of the world. And and so I just gave it to Trey, and he returned it the way it is. It's just beautiful.
On the Path to Healing. That song's a trip to me. It's got a really mysterious feel, which I always appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I cut a lot of stuff out of that, but the direction that I wish I would have put in there is like more like footsteps on different gravel and this, and the path to the healing waters. And so it's simply the environment, the atmosphere of like walking to a path of waters that heal you, and then the way it comes in and skerrick saxophone and stuff. It's also very ambient piece, but not space music. There's a lot of ambience to the sound of the piece, but skerrick saxophone and the way I'm just playing that cymbal, it's really relaxing. It's like, yeah, man,
Do
going
you
to the healing waters.
I'm doing my best work now because I can see more things. I have a hunger no matter what I've accomplished, but this is my, I don't know, I'm more here. How do you feel? Because I listen to this album and I'm going, could you have done this at 25? I don't think so. I don't think anybody could have done that at 25.
I think I'm doing my best work, you know. But on the other hand, my drumming situation is different. I don't actually play drums so much anymore. I've got like arthritis in my hands. I mean, I could play, but I don't really go out and gig anymore. And I'm in advance of planning on me being older. I've been learning a lot of software, uh, ways that I can continue to make music when I don't have to do it in a physical way. And oftentimes, the way I'm making music now, the drums go on last, and because I have this environment or this atmosphere, and then what human element do I want to put in? And so I have a different way of making music, but it's and I'm still collaborating, but I think I'm doing my best stuff, and I'm making visual stuff with it with AI now, and it's little movies, and I mean, I'm very excited about, where where everything is aside from the world out there. I think there's a lot of really beautiful music being made now. Um, I think that English jazz scene, that London-based jazz scene is so cool because they're coming from electronics as well as like Pharoah Sanders,
Mhm.
and it's got history to it, but it's also very accepting of whatever is new technology-wise and how to best integrate that. So I'm really enjoying that. I enjoy the Scandinavian music makers, instrumental music makers, and I feel like an affinity with that sort of vibe. Um, I don't know. I like a lot of different music, and so oftentimes I wake up 4 or 5 in the morning, and that's my. It's like, okay, you can try to get back to sleep, but you're going to be up for an hour. So I put my ear pods in, and I'll explore. I'll like try to find new music and stuff. But that's difficult to do like at 4 in the morning. But because you want the vibe, say you're looking for a certain vibe, and there's so much music out there. It's fun to it's a great joy for me to still continue to find new music to enjoy and listen to. And I found in the past, like 5, 6 years, that I haven't done that enough. That I'm just making music, making music, making music, and I don't like slow down enough to do what started me making music in the first place. Listen to music.
A music dude that I knew, we were listening to you and he was going, he says, you know, that guy's a jazz dude, man. That guy plays like that guy's a jazz dude. And I never forgot that.
That's really cool because I just did spoke to someone earlier and she was saying, like how learn these complicated, you know, polyrhythmic Latin stuff that you do, combining it with this, and I was like, that's a bunch of hogwash. Like I played with these guys who played Latin, but I never played Latin. I did everything like a jazz drummer, and it just happened to fit. I mean, with the I just swing it like a jazz guy, ting, 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 and so it added a different touch and feel and flavor to that sound. But he was right. I'd approach everything more like like Elvin, Jack DeJohnette, and I was hardly a rock drummer. That was the hardest stuff for me to to play the rock songs. But yeah, he was right.
Cut four is that's a great tune.
Oh yeah,
He-
just Airto doing what he does. Yeah, I know. I mean, he's the shaman. I mean, it's the same with Zakir. I the idea was to add stuff to him, to both those guys, and then in the end, I just said, let them be. You know, like let me present them,
yeah.
and I hope it felt respectful to me, but the other way would have been cool too. But yeah, I mean, these are masters. These are masters that I'm blessed to have, like in a collaboration on a record with mine, and I'm really grateful. I mean, they are just, and they're egoless, John. I mean, they could play anything. You know what I mean? I've given this record in earlier stages to people with these. They're aware of the names on it, Jack DeJohnette, and they're expecting a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, but these musicians really expect and really totally get what I'm doing.
I mean, through the years, I've watched interviews with him, and there's a part of him that's really unassuming, because when he's on stage and talking to people, and there's that the side of him, he seems like he has to go a little wink in his eye. He's a funny guy. Zakir.
Zakir Hussein, oh yeah, he's a magical man, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, he's got a great sense of humor. He's got an unbelievable sense of humility. He's really gracious
Yeah.
to everybody, other musicians. I mean, he's so steeped in his own confidence and knowledge of self-awareness that he's got enough to just give away in plentiful.
He's your like I love that piece. That
Like that one, yeah.
Jack's on there. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack's on there, and I'm really proud of the drum solo I take because it's the kind of drum solo I imagine doing for a record like this, where I mean, initially the one of the things I said was no grooves on this record, no backbeats, you know. Um, and then so you do solos, but you do solos as if you're like, you know, as if like you're fog on the river, you know. It's not all based in time and this. It's more like drums are washing over you. So there's a time going, there's a pulse going, but the way I play the solos, I'm really proud of it because it's so expressive to me. It's not like your usual drum solo, bash, bash, bash. It's more like, you know, like a, 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 like it's a different approach. And also the piece of music, it's almost like a caravanserai vibe, you know? I mean, even like the visual is like an exodus. I see like a, a tribe of people walking down roads, like escaping one place, going to another. You know, that's my visual thing. And that is like what the music feels like. I ended up calling Hajira, which was tough because, you know, Joni Mitchell owns that title. But I thought, you know, she doesn't own the word. And I really researched what it meant. And it was the perfect word for the piece of music. You know, it's a journey, it's a personal journey, what the Hajira means. And so you're on the way to some place that is hopefully a more enlightening place. And so I just thought, okay, I'm going to use Hajira.
Who in your life that you've met surprised you the most?
Well, Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger is a really interesting character. Um, he's, you know, super smart and just like keeps unbelievably healthy. Um, he's one of the hardest working people I've ever met. Um, it's interesting to watch these kind of people. Um, Steve Winwood is really, you know, something. He's just so unassuming and such a, you know, like a country lad. You know, he's been there, done that with all the rock star stuff, and so he's just like really. And then you know, just to be around somebody like that, and then the voice opens up, and it's like, oh my God, this is Steve Winwood. I had the same experience. I toured with an Italian singer named Zucchero in the 80s. And I recorded an album with him as well. There was a song on there that uh, Pavarotti sang. And so we had to do the tour. Pavarotti obviously wasn't going to do that. So they got a young guy to do it. And he was with us on the bus for 3 months, Andrea Bocelli.
Right.
But, you know, to see Andrea Bocelli like playing Stevie Wonder at soundcheck, you know, but before he was known or famous or anything. You know, for me, it's like, yeah, people surprise you, but it's fun to observe them and the way that they are, you know, like somebody like Mick, for instance, like just that he would like start an idea and I would think if I were doing that, I'd throw it out. It's so
Really?
simple, so basic, you know, it's like, what's that, right? And but Mick knows that he's going to work it. He's going to put his voice on it, which is like, okay, open the curtains, right? And then the Rolling Stones are going to play on it, and it's going to be simple and sound friggin' great, right? So, you know, that's Carlos is the same way. He'd bring what seemed like the stupidest, most basic idea, like a little groove thing from some tribal group in Africa, and he can see where it's going to go. And so I think that that's something that I've learned from some of these people is like trust your instincts when you're making music. Like play that idea out. Don't get rid of it so quickly. Give it some breathing room, you know, incubate it, breathe some life into it.
Carlos Santana was born July 20th, 1947, in Mexico. He was really exposed to a lot of music at an early age by his father, who was a mariachi violinist. And by 8, that's what Santana was doing, playing the violin. By 12, he picked up the guitar, and he was heavily influenced by blues guitarist B.B. King and Johnny Lee Hooker. In the early 60s, he moved to San Francisco, where he immersed himself in the music scene. In 66, he formed the Santana Blues Band, which later, of course, became Santana, a band that fused Latin rhythms, blues, and rock, and they quickly gained a lot of attention in the local scene. The band's breakthrough was in 69, when they played Woodstock without even releasing their first album. They would have great albums like the self-titled Santana, Abraxas, Santana 3. In the early 70s, they started going into a jazz fusion style. The band's early lineup included keyboardist Greg Raleigh, who was also a vocalist, David Brown on bass, Michael Shrieve on drums, Later, Neal Schon would join. Santana, one of the most influential bands in the history of rock and roll. You think that kid was walking into the Fillmore wanting to sit in? Well, describe that kid who get on stage. You did it at the Fillmore. What was that kid like? Who was he?
I think he was pretty confident. Like he had been practicing every day, getting up when his parents went to work. If he would practice the same hours they were at work from 8 a.m., starting at 8 a.m., and then go to big band at 3 o'clock. And he played a lot and got experience and had some confidence. Called all his friends, music friends, and said, "Let's go up to the Fillmore and see if we can sit in." And every one of them said, "Yeah, right." And so, it pissed me off enough that I said, "Well, I'm gonna at least go try." And so I went up there and pulled on Michael Bloomfield's pant leg and asked if I could sit in. And I couldn't believe it. He said, "Yeah," you know. And so big lessons there, of course, the obvious ones, but I think I was pretty confident.
Carlos Santana to you is?
My musical soul brother.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but look, the chance thing about the Fillmore, for instance, there was no way someone with your skills. I mean, I've watched you at Woodstock. I'd watched that. It's been called the Holy Grail of drumming by some people. Henry Gross was just telling me. I interview him once a year, and he always says, "Come on, the old thing. You've said it too. If you remember it, you weren't there, but you were gonna. There was no way you were going to get noticed. You were just at a certain level."
I had no idea. I mean, the better solo is the next year at Tanglewood, but nobody had any idea, John, that this is going to happen. We were doing what we were doing. I mean, we were doing this every night, and it just happened to be caught on camera in front of 500,000 people. But that's what we were doing, and we were playing at that level every night.
It's interesting
So
the fact that the first album came out, what, 6, 8 days after your performance then.
something within the month that I know it's kind of ironic, but I also think it's pretty amazing that we won the crowd over when nobody had heard the music before.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
And I forgot that over the years, that was one of the things that happened where we were the only band that really didn't have a record out.
do you think Neal Schon changed did he change things in Santana when he came in?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's an interesting story as well. Greg Raleigh, he brought the English rock side to that band. I brought the jazz side. Carlos brought the blues and super melodic. Percussionists brought the Latin stuff and Mongo Santa Maria and all the Latin stuff. Um, and Greg was the English rocker, man. And so, he always wished that Carlos played a little more like Clapton, I think.
Really?
Well, yeah. So, so Greg and I saw Neal Schon playing at a club. Greg and I used to live together, and the kid was like 16, but it was perfect. Greg loved this kind of guitar playing. So, I mean, in a strange, series of events, Neil one night ended up having to choose between joining Eric Clapton's band or Santana. And the kid is still in high school.
Yeah.
So, so when he came in, Carlos was very gracious, I think, to agree to it. But they drove each other to new heights. And they also provided contrast on beautiful piece of music like Song of the Wind. Um, Sometimes it's hard to tell them apart, but you can tell them apart. Each offer something. They play together very well. It's very respectful. I think it made some real magic. Neil is, I mean, he's famous for Journey, but he's a really great guitar player.
Who are the sinfully underrated drummers to you? Who are they?
I mean, I mean, if you're in the jazz world, you know all the jazz people, and there's a bunch of drummers from that era that maybe are not as famous as well known as they should be now. And it's probably the same in rock, of course. I mean, but everybody's had their moment, like a drummer like Dino Danelli, who's a great drummer from the Rascals. Um, Ginger Baker, I mean, I have a issue. I, I'm not so excited about Ginger Baker as everybody else is, frankly.
Why is
Um,
that?
I don't know. It just seems like really heavy, and it is heavy, and he meant it to be heavy, but it's like clumpy to me. So I just have a different taste. I mean, I like drummers like a guy named Brady Blade. I mean, his brother Brian Blade,
Hmm.
and oh, there's beautiful young drummers out there now too. I mean, there's so many beautiful things going on musically. I think the best thing is people should just explore more. I think what I'll start doing is posting more on Facebook and stuff of things that I find interesting. I've been doing that lately. Like, I want to turn people on to some stuff, and I'll put there's this woman from Tel Aviv that I'm just a big fan of, but I posted her recently, and some people are like, "Oh man, that is so cool, thank you," and other people are like, "Interesting." Interesting is not the right response. But go explore, find stuff. There's so much out there.
Every year of the history of the world, there's always some new music that sucks. That's going to happen by. But when I hear that as a blanket statement, I'm going, you're not searching enough, man.
Yeah, I think that in any genre people are doing stuff, but people get stuck in they get stuck in their own soundtrack to their life.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, I'll admit now that we look at, like, I have a video podcast called Stick People um, on YouTube with Lenny White, Mike Clark, David Garibaldi, and Gregorico. And we interview the greatest drummers and jazz musicians in the world. Our new one is Ron Carter coming out, a bass player who's played on so many records that spins your head. So, everybody's got their own, even in this group, we're really good friends, but everybody's got their own tastes, and I realize that my taste and the stuff that I do is pretty left of center, even for those guys. So, but it doesn't matter. The thing is, it just doesn't matter. I think people recognize the intention that you do behind the stuff uh, that you do, and so I don't know. People that are unrecognized, they're recognized somewhere.
David Garibaldi. So you came up to him and said, "Where do you live?" And you guys ended up living together for a year.
Well, I went to see him play. I heard about him a lot in San Francisco, but I was always on the road with Santana. But there were cassette tapes being passed around about with this guy and this band, Tower of Power, and I had heard them. And so one night I was able to go see him, and I was living in the Marin County across the Golden Gate Bridge. I saw him in San Francisco in a small, sweaty club, and it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life. I did a radio podcast for a while interviewing musicians, and um, it was like I walked into that place and the rhythm was like some alien displaced funk music that you never heard before. And so I introduced myself afterwards, and it was just regular question like, where do you live, type of thing. And he said, I don't know, I'm looking for a place right now. And so I had this nice place, and so I invited him to move in. And yeah, we lived together for like a year. I was able to learn some of his stuff. At least I know where it's coming from. He's unbelievable as a person, as a drummer, as a human being. And he's just unbelievable. He's like a man among men.
Steve Winwood, the band Go, Al Di Meola. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I mean, okay, I have to go back a little bit further because I had been looking for Stomy Yamashita for a year. Stomy Yamashita was a classical percussionist, and being in Santana and having the success of Soul Sacrifice, I was required to play a drum solo every night. So, I go through all the jazz guys. I listen to study drum solos, and I started listening to percussion ensembles. I was in a record store in Berkeley, California, one day, and this music was playing. It was percussion music, and that was the kind of the days when they used to place the album up, what they're playing in the store, so you could see what they're playing. It was cool. And this was like a gatefold, and it was like this Japanese guy with hair halfway down his back, a stage full of percussion instruments, abnormal percussion as well, leaping in midair with a timpani stick in his mouth. And I said, "Who is this guy, man?" And so I bought everything he did, and I learned about him, and I traced him for a year. And we finally met on the last day of a tour in Rome, and he was staying in the same hotel. And I went to his hotel room, and he's about 5 feet tall, and his stature is like he's 8 feet tall, you know. And I introduced myself, and we talked. Within 45 minutes, we were both on the floor laughing and doing. It was like like another Soul Brother thing, you know. So I said I wanted to do this avant-garde percussion thing that you're doing. He said, "Oh, I want you to come with me and do this pop band I'm putting together with Steve Winwood and Klaus Schultz, who I didn't know." So that's how Go came about, and Al Di Meola. I mean, that was a little bit of a fluke, but um, I knew Al. I knew Al from when Lenny bringing him over to my house. Lenny White bringing him to my house in San Francisco as a 19-year-old when Chick Corea took him out of Berkeley School of Music. So I've been knowing Al for a while, and still do. Um, that was an incredible experience. A really, life-changing group of people for me. I learned a lot.
I really, really, man to man, you made a difference in my life. You really, really did. And it's important for me to tell you this. And I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, man. I did too, John, very much.
Take good care of yourself.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Remember, if you want to help the channel, a lot of channels are suffering right now with the algorithm changing all the time on YouTube. Sometimes we have good months. Other times we have really bad months. If you want to make a PayPal donation, there's a link at the very top of the description. You can join our Patreon and get early access to all our videos. And Teespring and Rocky Stream Music have made a deal where you can buy a t-shirt, a cap, a jacket, all kinds of stuff with our logo on it. Subscribe to our channel, share our videos, comment on them, and like them. And click on that bell notification if you subscribe so you don't miss any videos. I'm John Bowden. This is Rocky Stream Music. Take care.